At the beginning of the film, we meet Linda Little, a corporate woman who is a very talented strategist. I mean, no matter how much work you give Linda, she'll not only finish it, but the quality of her work will also be exceptional. Despite her talent, Linda was socially awkward. She didn't dress smartly. Her manner of speaking was very strange, and people generally considered her a bit weird. Linda also had a guy named Donovan at her company who was completely useless at work, but he boasted and appeared quite socially smart. In fact, Donovan would claim Linda's reports as his own and win praise from his superiors. Despite all this, the company's boss knew Linda was a hard worker and was about to give her a promotion. But then, the boss passed away, leaving the company to be run by the boss's son, Bradley Preston. Bradley had been Donovan's friend since college. Consequently, Bradley gave Linda the promotion she was supposed to have. In fact, Bradley didn't like Linda at all. On the very first day, Linda had put her tuna fish in Bradley's hand, and it smelled bad. Bradley even complained to Linda about her hygiene, which was embarrassing for Linda. At this point, Linda learns that Donovan has been promoted, and she goes to Bradley's office to confront him. Bradley, impressed by Linda's courage, tells her that their company is merging with a Bangkok company, and Bradley, Donovan, and 2 other executives are traveling to Bangkok for this purpose. In fact, Linda can come to Bangkok with them. If Linda can solve the numbers issue arising in their merger, Bradley will consider her promotion. Hearing this, Linda immediately agrees to go to Bangkok. We also see Linda crying and comforting herself in her car, hurt by Bradley's hygiene talk. Now, friends, let me give you some additional information, as it will be useful later in the movie. For example, Linda has a pet named Sweetie, a cockatiel. Then Linda loves watching survival shows on TV, which usually involve humans surviving in the jungle using survival techniques. It's worth noting that during Linda and Daniel's meeting, we also meet a woman named Zuri, Bradley's girlfriend. Yes, Zuri is very stylish and wears a huge diamond engagement ring. The next morning, Linda meets Bradley, Donovan, and the other executives at the airport, all of whom are traveling to Bangkok by private plane. Linda says she checked Appendix D of the company data, which contained a loophole that would not only help the merger happen, but also solve the company's problems. Now, this was impressive, but the executives were still more focused on Linda's strange behavior, not how talented she was. Anyway, the flight commences, and on the plane, Donovan retrieves a video of Linda from somewhere, her audition tape. Such an audition? Well, Linda also wanted to be on the show Survivor, and had made an audition clip for it, saying, "I can survive, I have these skills." And this tape was a bit cringeworthy, and Donovan shows it to everyone and starts making fun of Linda. Linda is hurt and starts crying. In fact, she doesn't even save the Appendix D document she was working on. But then the plane experiences turbulence, and the next moment, it escalates to a much greater level. The plane's engine catches fire, and the plane literally begins to break apart. A hole forms in the side of the plane. Linda and Bradley, wearing seatbelts, are unable to escape through the hole. The others are pulled out of the plane, but Donovan somehow survives by grabbing Linda's hand. At this point, Donovan tries to strangle Linda so he can sit in her seat with her seatbelt on. He wanted to save himself by killing Linda, but Linda attacks Donovan with a fork, and Donovan is also pulled out. At this point, the plane crashes into the ocean, and Linda begins to drown. She somehow manages to free herself, using her survival skills. But surviving in the middle of the ocean was extremely difficult. The scene cuts to the next scene. Now, in the next scene, we find Linda on an island or beach. Apparently, she was swept ashore by a tidal wave. Linda was perfectly fine, but this island was completely isolated. There was only ocean around, and she had no idea where it was. Linda begins exploring the island. At a short distance away, she finds Bradley unconscious. Linda immediately fashions a sharp object from a stone. Then she builds a shed for Bradley with leaves, and she begins saving Bradley's life. Bradley's leg was injured, so he won't be able to walk. When he regains consciousness. Now, after about a day and a half, Bradley wakes up, and Linda gives him clean water. Yes, Linda's survival skills were so good that she even started producing clean water. Then, she even lit a fire by rubbing stones so they could cook and eat sea fish. Bradley was lying in a spot, and Linda was taking care of him. Bradley's attitude remained bossy, as he began giving Linda orders, saying, "You work for me, I'll fire you," and so on. Linda didn't like this attitude, and so she left him. Bradley was not only alone, but he also couldn't walk and lacked any survival skills. Bradley began to suffer from hunger and thirst, and it seemed as if he would die. But after about a day and a half, Linda returned and gave him clean water. By this point, Bradley understood that if he wanted to survive, he had to listen to Linda. Anyway, Linda fashioned a sharp spear and used it to successfully hunt a wild boar in the island's forest. Then Linda cooked it, and that night, Bradley and Linda had a good meal. Linda seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the survival life, while Bradley was completely distraught. But at least Bradley and Linda had become somewhat friendly. The next morning, Linda went into the island's jungle to collect berries, fruits, and more, and discovered a freshwater waterfall. Linda was bathing in joy, but then she saw a motorboat in the ocean, carrying a few people. Linda yelled for help, but the next moment she stopped. She didn't want to return to the real world. She rather wanted to stay on the island. We then see Linda return to Bradley, where she gives him food and drinks, although she doesn't tell Bradley anything about the boat. Bradley says they've been stranded on the island for 2 weeks and should make a plan to get out. In fact, Bradley was now able to walk with the help of a stick, meaning he would soon recover and be able to walk properly. Bradley suggested they build a raft and get out. However, Linda was enjoying herself and didn't want to be rescued. They argue over this, but Bradley is unable to survive on his own, forcing him to return to Linda. Bradley requests Linda to teach him survival skills, and after a little drama, Linda agrees. Bradley's training begins, with Linda taking him on a tour of the island's jungle. It literally resembles a mountain, where the two carefully walk along the cliff's edge. Linda explains that they should never eat berries that are yellow, green, or white. However, if they want to know whether berries are poisonous, they can apply them to their skin. If there's a reaction, it's poisonous. If there's no reaction, it's fine. The view of the island from this cliff is spectacular, and at one point, they see a cross-shaped stone in the distance. Linda tells Bradley never to go beyond the X, as there are very poisonous plants on that side, and if Bradley goes there, he'll start itching within 2 or 3 steps. He won't survive this, in short. While returning from the cliff to the seashore, Linda slips, but Bradley manages to pull her up. Then, they return to their place, eat, and drink, and Linda reveals that she's also making wine from the fruits. And that's it. That night, they both drink wine and share a lot about their lives. For example, Bradley was never close to his father and was mostly raised by his mother. In fact, Bradley's mother was very mean and hard-hearted, and this upbringing is probably the reason Bradley is the way he is today. Linda then says, "Monsters are not born, they are created." And friends, you must remember this line. Anyway, here Linda also reveals a little about her life. She tells that she used to have a husband who is no longer in this world. Linda's husband was very abusive and would hit her after drinking. Initially he wasn't like that, but over time he changed, and Linda always hoped that her husband would return to his caring ways. Linda recounts that her husband died in a car accident, and she also reveals that whenever he drank too much, Linda would hide his car keys to prevent him from driving. But one night, he became so drunk that Linda, fed up, left his car keys on the table. In fact, Linda made him drink an extra drink, and that very night, her husband had an accident and couldn't survive. Linda became emotional while telling this story, and Bradley understood her feelings. They slept together that night, and when Linda woke up in the morning, she saw Bradley bathing naked. Somehow, Linda began to feel attracted to Bradley, and they began to understand each other. Then a storm hits the island, and the two escape into a cave to survive. They grow close together for warmth and sleep in the cave. The next morning, the weather is good again, and Bradley is also working hard. His survival skills have improved. His leg has also healed. Bradley offers to cook for Linda tonight, and Linda is overjoyed. That night, Bradley has cooked a lot and offers her food. Linda begins to eat, but soon after, she begins to feel dizzy. Why? Because Bradley had mixed poisonous berries into Linda's food, and as soon as Linda loses control, Bradley retrieves a raft from the nearby forest that he had secretly prepared for himself. Bradley's plan had always been to escape, and he finally manages to knock Linda almost unconscious and escape with the raft. Bradley had also stored food supplies on the raft, and then he sets out to sea. But friends, when it comes to survival, Bradley is still a noob, and the raft he built begins to fall apart. In no time his raft breaks, and Bradley begins to drown. As he drowns, Bradley has a vision of Zuri vomiting on him. But in reality, friends, Linda had saved Bradley from drowning and was the one who was vomiting on him. Now, how did Linda herself survive? Well, you'll find out more about that later. For now, Bradley had lost consciousness, and when he regains consciousness, he finds Linda in front of him. Linda explains that the amount of poisonous berries Bradley had put in Linda's food was very small. This means that it won't kill a person. Rather, it will simply put a person in a very problematic state. Linda had enough time to save herself by vomiting on herself, and then saved Bradley from drowning as well. Bradley breaks down in tears, saying, "I didn't want to kill you. I just wanted to knock you unconscious and run away." Linda consoles Bradley and gives him some octopus to eat, and as soon as he eats it, he goes into a state of paralysis. Yes, to teach Bradley a lesson, Linda feeds him an octopus that can temporarily paralyze a person. Then, Linda pretends she's cutting Bradley's meat, but in reality, she was cutting a rat near his leg, and this frightens Bradley immensely. Bradley doesn't realize anything because he can't feel anything due to the temporary paralysis. He thinks his meat is now gone, but of course, Linda shows him the rat and says, "I haven't taught you everything, and if Bradley does something like this again, Linda will punish him for real." In this situation, Bradley was at Linda's mercy, unable to do anything. Linda also gives the example of her dad having a naughty dog. To make it obedient, she neutered it. This means she'll do the same with Bradley. By the way, Linda also had a nice knife, and that was strange. Such a well-made, sharp knife on the island looked like it was made in the city. So where did this knife come from? Linda said it had washed up on the seashore. Anyway, Bradley recovered later, and he wasn't talking to Linda and wasn't trying to escape. Linda goes into the island's jungle to collect materials, and here she again sees a boat. This boat arrives on the island, carrying Zuri and a captain. Yes, friends, Zuri finally arrived on the island while searching for Bradley, and she meets Linda. Linda was not happy to see Zuri, but she says that Bradley is also alive. In fact, Linda starts taking Zuri and Captain to Bradley. All three start walking through the narrow path of the mountain cliff, and Linda, on the pretext of tying her shoelace, asks them to go ahead. The stone ahead was loose, and as soon as they reach there, the stone breaks and Zuri slips from the cliff, but Captain catches Zuri and starts pulling her up. Here Linda thinks of throwing them both down, but we viewers are not shown what Linda did. In the very next scene, we see Linda back near Bradley, where Linda was alone. So Zuri and the captain were dealt with there. Linda doesn't tell Bradley anything about this. Bradley notices that Linda's a little quiet, as if she's regretting something. That night, Linda has a vision of Zuri crawling out of the water, and Zuri also says that Linda killed her, and now she'll tell Bradley the truth about Linda and all. Linda cries and says no, but the next moment she realizes that this vision was just a hallucination. This suggests that Linda may have actually knocked Zuri and the captain out of the trap, and now she's regretting it. Anyway, the next day, we see Bradley trying to hunt a wild boar with a spear. The boar escapes, but Bradley sees a human hand buried in the sand. Bradley sees Zuri's large diamond ring on this hand. So friends, Zuri was actually buried in the sand. Seeing this, Bradley realizes that Zuri came to rescue him and that it might be Linda who killed Zuri. Bradley cries profusely, and then he finally runs to Linda and confronts her. Linda claims she knows nothing about this, but Bradley shows her Zuri's ring. They begin to argue over this. Linda pretends it was all just an accident, but Bradley says, "You took care of your husband too. He may have been in a car accident, but you were the one who planned it." Bradley then pulls out a knife, the same sharp knife we saw Linda carrying earlier. Bradley chases Linda, and a hide-and-seek scuffle ensues between them in the woods. But as expected, Linda is more experienced, and she begins to overpower Bradley. She bites Bradley's flesh. She slashes the diamond ring like a psycho, and in return, Bradley severely injures Linda's eye. Linda also stabs Bradley with the same knife, and Bradley finally flees. While running, he finally reaches the stone that formed the X, and crossing it means risking his life. Bradley ignores this. Instead, he runs further, and surprisingly, on the other side of the stone, there's a luxurious mansion. Yes, friends, Bradley was shocked to see this and enters the house. It was filled with champagne mineral water, various fruits, and food, as if it belonged to a very wealthy person. This suggests that Linda knew about this house and deliberately hid it from Bradley. Bradley drinks the water and searches for the knife, but he can't find it. Just then, Linda's voice comes over the house's speakers, saying, "You won't find a knife in the house because I've already removed it." In fact, if you remember, Linda had brought a nice, well-made knife, saying she found it on the seashore. Well, she brought it from this very house. Linda had discovered this and would come here from time to time to thoroughly enjoy it. This mansion belonged to a billionaire, and his people would come to the island every few days and deliver food and other items to the house, bringing general supplies. The billionaire was so wealthy that he never visited or cared for the place. But yes, this place is very well maintained. Remember, Linda once saw a motorboat. Well, she followed that motorboat and reached this mansion. In fact, she had even noted the entry password by observing it secretly. Currently, Linda was in the house's control room. From there, not only keeping an eye on Bradley, but also speaking through the microphone and speakers. Bradley immediately breaks or covers up the CCTV camera. Linda is speaking over the speaker, saying that when she was alone on the island with Bradley, everything was perfect. They were living a good life. But Zuri ruined everything, and so Linda hits the captain on the head with a stone, knocking him and Zuri out with a cliff. At one point, Linda confronts Bradley, holding a short gun that must have been found in this house. Bradley pretends to cry and says, "I was wrong. I'm a bad person.
सर्वाइव करना सिखाई लेकिन मैंने तुम्हें धोखा दिया." ब्रैडली लिंडा से आई लव यू तक कह देता है और यहीं आइलैंड पे हम
and promises to stay on the island forever. At this moment, Linda becomes a little emotionally weak, and they both start laughing. Then Bradley seizes the opportunity and attacks Linda with a sharp instrument, causing the short gun to fall from her hand. This sharp tool was actually the horn of an animal statue that Bradley had removed, and Linda noticed it too. But, yes, she noticed it a little late. By this point, Bradley had picked up a short gun and pointed it at Linda. He called her a crazy bitch and fired, but the short gun was empty. Yes, friends, just then Linda attacked Bradley with a golf stick and finished him off. The scene cuts here, and the next scene is from about a year later, where we see Linda playing golf. She has actually become a celebrity and was currently participating in a celebrity golf tournament. How? Well, she was rescued from the island and wrote a book about her experience, which became a huge hit. Linda wrote in the book that she survived alone, and now, friends, she's no longer the carefree person she once was. Rather, she's become quite posh. In front of the media, Linda acts as if she misses her colleagues. And then Linda was like, "I'm writing a self-help book." We also learn that a movie is going to be made based on Linda's survival story. At the end of the film, Linda is driving with her pet cocktail, Sweetie, enjoying the music of One Way and Another by Bloody. The movie ends at this point. So friends, that was the plot of the film Send Help. Now let's discuss some theories related to it. First, Linda Little. At the beginning of the film, she is shown as a talented but socially awkward economic strategist working at Preston Strategic Solutions. Her reports are exceptional, but her personality makes people see her as the office weirdo. Linda's transformation from a helpless employee to a ruthless predator is the film's biggest highlight. Behind Linda's personality lies a painful past, revealed midway through the film. She tells brutally that her husband was extremely abusive and would assault her after drinking. Linda tolerated years of abuse, hoping he would change. But one night she committed what could be called murder by inaction. While he was drunk, she deliberately left the car keys on the table and poured him one last drink, knowing he couldn't drive. That night, he had an accident and died. This shows that Linda already carried a deep desire for revenge. What happened on the island was simply the explosion of her suppressed rage. When Linda arrives on the island, her real personality emerges. Being a childhood fan of the show Survivor, she already has survival skills that Bradley lacks. When Bradley tries to command her, Linda leaves him alone for 2 days, so he learns his place. From that moment, Linda begins treating Bradley like a hostage. Bradley believes Linda is helping him, but in reality he always wants to escape from her. Linda trains Bradley on the island, but this training isn't only for survival. It's meant to make him obedient. This is where Linda evolves from victim to villainous protagonist. She even hides the existence of the island mansion from Bradley. Meanwhile, Bradley Preston is a typical nepotism brat who gets everything easily. His upbringing revolved around power and privilege. Bradley valued poshness and social skills over merit. Bradley's father was the company's CEO, but remained emotionally distant. The photos in Bradley's office show how absent he was, leaving Bradley constantly seeking validation. Bradley even admits that his mother was extremely mean and hard-hearted. Because of this upbringing, Bradley developed an emotional void. His rude behavior toward Linda was actually misplaced anger toward his mother, directed at women he considered weak. After the plane crash, Bradley initially tries to assert dominance on the island, reminding Linda that she works for him and threatening to fire her. But when Linda calmly lets him suffer, he realizes she is the real boss on the island. Another psychological clue appears when Linda tells Bradley about her father's dog. When the dog misbehaved, her father neutered it to make it calm and obedient. This becomes important later. When Bradley betrays Linda and tries to escape by building a raft, Linda poisons him with octopus venom and paralyzes him. Symbolically, this moment resembles neutering Bradley. Bradley becomes terrified and starts crying. This scene completes Linda's transformation as she gains full psychological control over him. At the end of the film, Linda is playing golf. In the movie, golf represents status and exclusion. Earlier, Bradley denied Linda a promotion because Donovan played golf with her and said she wasn't the golfing type, meaning she didn't belong to their elite circle. In the climax, Linda kills Bradley with a golf club she finds at the mansion. It's an ironic twist. The same symbol of elite exclusion becomes the weapon that ends Bradley's life. In the final scene, Linda sings "One Way or Another" while driving her luxury car. The song is about a stalker with dangerous intentions, but has a catchy tone, perfectly reflecting Linda's character. One way or another means she achieved everything she wanted: success, wealth, and fame, whether through hard work or murder. That's what makes the film fascinating. Both characters are morally gray, leaving us unsure whom to support. So that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. Also share your thoughts or theories in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this.